Commander Sarah Chun stared at the data streaming across her console and felt her breath catch in her throat. The numbers made no sense. The object ahead of them was massive, roughly the size of Earth, but it was moving through space in a way that no natural planet ever could. Run the scans again, she ordered her science. Officer Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka nodded and began the sequence for the third time. They had been mapping this sector of the galactic rim for 6 months now, cataloging stars and planetary systems that no human had ever seen before. The Pathfinder was a small ship by military standards, carrying only 40 crew members, but it was packed with the best scanning equipment humanity could build. Commander, the results are the same, Tanaka said quietly. That object is definitely artificial. Sarah leaned forward in her chair. Artificial meant alien, more specifically. It meant alien technology on a scale that should not exist. The galactic community, that collection of older species who barely tolerated humanity's presence among the stars, had always insisted that megastructures of this size were impossible. The energy requirements alone would bankrupt a dozen solar systems. Get me a closer look, Sarah commanded. Full spectrum analysis. The ship's powerful sensors focused on the mysterious object, and slowly an image began to form on the main view screen. What they saw made the entire bridge crew fall silent. The surface was not rock or ice like a normal planet. Instead, it was covered in geometric patterns. Massive plates of dark metal that fit together like puzzle pieces. Towers rose from the surface, each 1 kilometer's height. Train structures dotted the landscape, too regular to be natural formations. Those look like weapon emplacements, said Marcus Webb. The ship's Zen archaeologist had come to the bridge as soon as he heard about the anomaly. Weapon emplacements the size of cities, he added, his voice filled with awe. Sarah pulled up the tactical display. If those were weapons, then this thing was not just a structure. It was a warship, planet-sized warship. This cannot be real, she whispered. The energy required to move something this massive is beyond anything we understand, Webb finished. But it is real. Commander, we are looking at it right now. Sarah made her decision quickly. Tanaka, send a priority message back to Fleet Command. Tell them we have found something unprecedented. Include all our scan data. She paused, then added, and tell them we are going to investigate up close. The Pathfinder approached the massive structure slowly. Carefully, every sensor was active, recording everything as they drew nearer. More details became visible. The hull, if it could be called that, was constructed from materials that their scanners could not fully identify. Exotic alloys that should not be stable at room temperature. Energy signatures that had been dormant for millennia, but were still detectable. I am picking up power conduits, Tanaka reported. They run throughout the entire structure. If this thing were active, the energy output would be, she paused, checking her calculations, equivalent to 100 suns. Marcus Webb could not contain his excitement. Do you know what this might be? He asked. The legends speak of an ancient race called the Architects. They supposedly built wonders that made the current galactic powers look like children playing with blocks. But everyone assumed those were just stories. Sarah had heard those legends too. Every species in the galaxy had their own version of the myth. A precursor race that had vanished millions of years ago, leaving behind only rumors and speculation. The Galactic Council dismissed such talk as fantasy. If this is real, Sarah said slowly, then we have just rewritten history. She authorized a landing party. Marcus Webb would lead it. Along with a team of engineers and security personnel, they would take one of the Pathfinder shuttles down to the surface and see what they could learn. The shuttle descended through a thin atmosphere that clung to the artificial planet. As they approached the surface, the true scale of the structure became apparent. The towers they had seen from orbit were massive beyond comprehension. Each one could house 1 million people. The landing site Webb chose was a flat area between two of the enormous weapon emplacements the shuttle touched down on metal that had not felt the tread of boots in countless ages. Webb was the first to step outside. His suit's sensors immediately began analyzing the environment. Breathable atmosphere, at least it had been once. Temperature within acceptable ranges. Background radiation slightly elevated, but not dangerous. This place was meant to be inhabited, he said over the com. There is infrastructure here, life support systems, habitation modules. This was not just a weapon. It was a home for whoever crewed it. The team spread out, taking samples and scanning everything. Engineer Chun, no relation to the commander, found what looked like an access port. I think I can interface with this, she reported. The technology is ancient, but the basic principles are familiar. Marcus Webb made his way to what appeared to be a command center. The entrance was massive, designed for beings much larger than humans inside. The chamber was filled with consoles and displays, all dark and silent. At the center of the room stood a chair, or perhaps a throne. It faced a curved screen that wrapped around the entire forward arc of the chamber. Webb approached it carefully. There was something about this place, a feeling he could not quite name, as if the room were waiting for someone to sit down and bring it back to life. He reached out and touched the armrest. Instantly, the entire chamber lit up. Lights flickered on throughout the structure. The screen in front of him blazed with data, and deep within the planet-sized warship, systems that had slept for 3 million years began to wake on the Pathfinder. Alarms blared. Commander, we are detecting a massive power surge, Tanaka shouted. The structure is activating. Sarah grabbed her com. Webb, what did you do? On the surface, Marcus Webb stood frozen in shock as the ancient warship came alive around him. Displays showed star maps and tactical data. The chair beneath his hand pulsed with energy, and then he felt it, a presence, ancient and vast, touching his mind. The ship was not just waking up, it was recognizing him, recognizing humanity's neural interface had been designed for beings remarkably similar to humans. And after 3 million years of waiting, it had found a match. Commander, Webb said, his voice shaking. I think this ship has been waiting for us. As the landing party watched in amazement, the entire planet began to move. Propulsion systems the size of continents fired to life. The artificial world turned in space, reorienting itself, and from deep within its ancient memory banks, a signal burst forth, a signal that traveled through channels in dark matter that human science did not yet understand, a signal that reached out across the galaxy, calling to others, calling to the fleet in hidden places, scattered throughout the Milky Way. Other planet-sized warships that had slumbered since the fall of the architects began to stir. Humanity had just awakened something that would change the galaxy forever, and they had no idea what they had done. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of receiving humanity's report. Representatives from 37 species filled the Dios massive chamber on the neutral station that orbited the galactic court. Crystalline hierarchy sent their prime executor, a being whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns. Collective dispatched a group mind of 12 identical forms that spoke in perfect unison. The Durson ancient dominion sent Ambassador Veleth, a creature that had lived for 3,000 years and thought it had seen everything they were about to learn otherwise. This council demands immediate clarification, the prime executor said, its voice like chimes in a windstorm. Humanity claims to have discovered a functional architect vessel. Such claims are absurd. The architects are mythology, nothing more. Admiral Zhang of the human delegation stood calmly. He was a veteran of the border wars, a man who did not intimidate easily. We have transmitted all our sensor data, he replied. The structure exists. It is functional. And it has begun moving under its own power. The chamber erupted in chaos. 3 dozen species began arguing at once. The collective's voices rose above the din. If humanity has activated ancient weapons technology, this represents a threat to galactic stability. We demand immediate access to the structure for proper study and containment. Containment? Jiang raised an eyebrow. The structure is 15,000 kilometers in diameter. I would be very interested to know how you plan to contain. Planet. Ambassador Veleth silenced the room with a gesture. His species had been traveling the stars when humanity's ancestors were still learning to make fire, and his authority was respected. Admiral Jiang, I must ask directly, can you control this vessel? Jiang hesitated. The truth was complicated. Marcus Webb had established a neural link with the ship's systems, but understanding how to actually command it was another matter entirely. We are learning, Jiang admitted. The interface appears designed for organic minds, similar to human neurology. Dr. Webb has been able to access basic systems. The implications of that statement hit the Council like a shockwave. If humans could interface with architect technology, and others could not, it meant humanity had accidentally stumbled into a position of unprecedented power. This is unacceptable, the Prime Executor declared. Humanity is barely a century into space travel. You lack the wisdom to wield such power. The Council must take custody of this discovery. Jiang's expression hardened. The vessel was discovered in unclaimed space by a human expedition. Under every treaty and convention that governs the frontier, it belongs to humanity. We will not surrender it. The hierarchy representative's crystalline body flashed with angry red light. Then you declare yourselves enemies of galactic order. Before Jiang could respond, his communicator chimed urgently. He glanced at the message and felt his blood run cold. Excuse me, he said to the Council, but I have just received word that 17 more structures matching the profile of our discovery have activated across the galaxy. All of them are moving toward human space. The Council chamber fell absolutely silent. 17 more 18 planet-sized warships total, all waking up, all heading toward humanity's territory. This cannot be coincidence, the collective said. Your Dr. Webb must have triggered some kind of recall protocol. You have summoned an entire fleet back at the discovery site. Marcus Webb was learning this firsthand. The neural interface allowed him to perceive the ship's systems in ways that were difficult to describe. He could feel the vast engines pushing the planet through space. He could sense things. Weapon systems charging after millions of years of dormancy, and he could hear or perhaps feel the other ships calling out across the void. They were coming. Homecoming to answer the signal. How do I stop it? He asked the empty command center, but the ship had no interest in stopping its programming was ancient but clear. When the signal was sent, the fleet would gather, a defense force would assemble. The enemy would be met with overwhelming power. Webb, you need to shut this down. Commander Chun's voice crackled over his comm. Fleet Command is in a panic. Half the galaxy is watching planet-sized weapons converge on human space. And everyone assumes we planned this. I did not plan anything. Webb protested. I just touched the interface. The ship did the rest on its own. He closed his eyes and tried to understand the data flowing through his mind. The ship's language was not words but concepts, pure meaning transmitted directly to his consciousness, and slowly a picture began to form. The architects had built these vessels for a reason. They had been at war, a war that lasted 10,000 years, a war they had lost. The ships were meant to sleep until they were needed again, until the enemy returned. Webb's eyes snapped open. Oh no, he whispered. Commander, I need to speak to Fleet Command immediately. We have a much bigger problem than angry Council members, within 72 hours. The galaxy watched as massive structures appeared in human space one by one. The Titans emerged from distant reaches of the Milky Way. Some came from nebulae where they had hidden in plain sight for eons. Others had buried themselves in asteroid fields or disguised themselves as barren moons. Each one was different in design, but similar in scale and purpose. Planet-sized warships, their hulls covered in weapons that made modern military equipment look like children's toys. The Pathfinders, Discovery now designated Titan 01, had been joined by 17 siblings. Humanity scrambled to make contact with each one. Marcus Webb's success with the neural interface had sparked a desperate search for other compatible individuals. It turned out that roughly 1 in 10,000 humans had the right neural architecture to link with architect technology, a rare gift that their species had carried unknowingly through millennia. The Galactic Council issued its ultimatum. Exactly 1 week after the first discovery, humanity will surrender all architect vessels to neutral custody within 30 standard days, or face unified military action. Admiral Zhang read the message to Earth's Security Council. They are serious, he said. The hierarchy, the collective, and the Dominion are setting aside centuries of rivalry. They are forming a joint fleet because they are terrified, said President Hassan. They have maintained their power through carefully balanced conventional forces. These Titans change everything. Can we operate them? Someone asked. Can we actually use these ships if it comes to war? Zhang pulled up a report from Commander Chun. Sarah had been promoted to Fleet Admiral and given command of Titan 01, which humanity had officially named the Colossus. Admiral Chun reports that the ship's systems are responding to human crews. He said, we have established command functions, navigation, and defensive capabilities. Weapon systems are still being analyzed, but preliminary tests suggest. He paused, barely believing the numbers. A single Titan could destroy an entire battle fleet. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. Humanity had gone from being the youngest and weakest spacefaring species to potentially the most powerful in less than 2 weeks. The question is, President Hassan said slowly, what do we do with this power? The Council wants us to give it up, but if we do, we return to being second-class citizens in a galaxy that has never respected us. Zhang considered carefully before responding. Ma'am, Dr. Webb has discovered something else in the Titan archives. Something that might explain why these ships were built in the first place. He pulled up a star chart that showed the Milky Way galaxy at the edge of the map, beyond the galactic rim. A marker blinked ominously. The architects were fighting something. Zhang said, something from outside our galaxy. And according to the Titans' records, they lost. These ships were set to sleep, waiting for the threat to return. President Hassan stared at the map. Are you saying this enemy might still exist? I am saying, Zhang replied grimly, that we might have just inherited someone else's war. Humanity's answer to the Galactic Council's ultimatum was delivered by Admiral Zhang himself. He stood before the assembled representatives and spoke 3 words that would echo through history. We respectfully decline. The chamber erupted. This is an act of war. The Prime Executor shouted, its crystalline body blazing with angry crimson light. You overstep your authority, humans. Zhang remained calm. The Titans were discovered in unclaimed space by human expeditions. He repeated, they responded to human neural patterns. They are ours by every law that governs the frontier. We will not surrender them to powers that have spent the last century treating humanity as inferior. The collective's 12 bodies spoke in eerie unison. Then you leave us no choice. The Council will act to preserve galactic stability. Force will be met with force. Zhang had expected this response. Earth's government had authorized him to be blunt. If you choose war, You should understand what you are choosing to fight. He activated a holographic display, showed the 18 Titans now gathered in human space. Their positions marked in blue around them, in red, were the locations of every major military installation, controlled by the 3 galactic powers. Each Titan has been partially analyzed. Jiang said, their weapon systems alone could sterilize planets. Their shields can withstand impacts from stellar masses. Their engines can move them at speeds that should be impossible for objects of their size. If you attack humanity, you attack a force that could burn the galaxy. He let that sink in before adding, but we do not want war. We want to be left alone to learn what these ships can do. Attack us, and you will regret it. Ambassador Veleth studied the human admiral with ancient eyes. You speak with confidence, Admiral. But confidence and capability are not the same thing. Can your people truly command these vessels in combat? Jiang met his gaze steadily. Would you like to find out? The council session ended with no resolution. Both sides retreated to prepare for what seemed inevitable. Humanity pulled all its colonies behind the Titan defense perimeter. The galactic powers began assembling. The largest combined fleet in modern history, 3 civilizations that had been rivals for centuries, now united in a single purpose: neutralize the human threat. Before it fully matured, Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Colossus and watched. The enemy fleet approacher crew had been training for 3 weeks. Barely enough time to understand the basics of operating a planet-sized warship. The neural interface helped, but the complexity of the systems was staggering. Fleet composition confirmed. Her tactical officer reported 2,347 capital ships, plus support vessels. Total enemy strength approximately 4,000 ships. Sarah had 5 Titans under her command, 5 against 4,000. The odds should have been absurdly in the enemy's favor, but Sarah had seen what the Colossus could do during their test runs. She had felt the power thrumming through its system still. A knot of worry twisted in her stomach. If she miscalculated, if the Titans proved less capable than the data suggested, humanity would be wiped out. Incoming transmission from the enemy fleet. Communications announced, they are demanding our immediate surrender. Tell them we decline. Sarah said firmly. The enemy fleet advanced. Their formation was textbook perfect. A strategy honed over thousands of years of conventional warfare. Battleships in front to absorb damage. Carriers in the middle to launch fighter wings. Destroyers screening the flanks. It was beautiful in its precision. It was also completely useless against what they faced. They are entering weapons range. Tactical announced. Enemy vessels are charging their primary batteries. Sarah took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. All Titans, activate defensive shields around the 5 massive vessels. Energy barriers sprang to life. They glowed with a soft blue light that seemed almost gentle. Enemy fleet is firing. Thousands of energy beams and projectiles streaked toward the Titans' weapons, capable of cracking planets. Concentrated on 5 targets. The impacts were spectacular. Light flared across the shield's energy readings spiked, and when the bombardment ended, the 5 Titans floated undamaged. Their shields had not even flickered. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Return fire, she ordered. Target the command ships only. Disable. Do not destroy. The Colossus responded from weapon emplacements the size of cities. Beams of concentrated energy lanced out across space. They did not look particularly impressive compared to the enemy's massive barrage. But where they struck, enemy ships simply ceased to exist. Matter converted directly to energy shields that could withstand nuclear weapons. Melted like paper in a furnace. Armor that had been forged in stellar cores vaporized instantly in 3 seconds. Sarah's single volley had destroyed 12 of the enemy's command vessels. Adjust fire, she said calmly. Target their battleships. Continue to demonstrate our superiority. What followed was not a battle, it was a demonstration. the 5 Titans moved through the enemy fleet like apex predators among prey. Every shot hit with perfect accuracy. Every target was chosen for maximum psychological impact. The enemy threw everything they had at the Titans' Nova bombs. Antimatter torpedoes. Focused gamma ray bursts. Nothing worked. The ancient shields held against attacks that should have been impossible to defend against. Enemy fleet is breaking formation. Tactical reported. They are attempting to retreat. Sarah had been waiting for this. All Titans. Move to pursue vector. Stay on them, but do not fire unless they resume hostilities. I want them to run all the way home with our shadows following. She opened a channel to the enemy fleet. This is Fleet Admiral Chun of the Titan Colossus to all hostile vessels. You have attacked human space without provocation. We have demonstrated that we can destroy you completely. But we choose not to. Her voice hardened. Return to your territories and tell your governments what you saw here today. Tell them that humanity will defend itself absolutely. But we seek no empire. Attack us again, and we will not show mercy. The enemy fleet scattered ships broke off in every direction. Desperate to escape the monsters they had awakened, some of the smaller vessels pushed their engines past safety limits, willing to risk catastrophic failure if it meant getting away faster. It was a complete rout. Sarah watched them go and felt no satisfaction. Only a deep weariness. They had just shattered the galactic balance of power. The old order was broken. What would replace it? She could not say, "Admiral, we are receiving priority communications from Earth." Her comm officer said, "President Hassan wants a full report. Tell her the enemy has been routed with minimal casualties on our side." Sarah replied, "0 friendly losses. Approximately 150 enemy ships destroyed, mostly command vessels and battleships." The numbers were staggering. Humanity had just defeated 3 galactic powers combined, while suffering no losses at all. Black on Earth and the halls of government. Champagne corks, pop politicians and generals celebrated what they saw as humanity's ascension to greatness. But in the quiet of the Colossus's command center, Marcus Webb studied the ancient archives with growing dread. He had found more entries, more warnings from the architects, the war they had fought, the enemy that had destroyed them despite all their power. There were details now, names and descriptions. The enemy had come from dark space between galaxies. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They consumed everything in their path. Entire star systems left lifeless. Whole civilizations reduced to elementary particles. Their matter harvested for incomprehensible purposes. The architects had built the Titans as a last defense, and it had not been enough. "Sarah," Webb said quietly into his comm, "we need to talk. I found out why the architects lost their war. And I think I know why the Titans are really here." But before he could explain, alarms blared throughout the ship. Contact. The sensor officer shouted, "Unknown signature at the galactic rim. Size. Dear God, the size is off the scale. It is bigger than a Titan." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Show me." The main screen shifted to display long-range sensor data at the very edge of the galaxy, where dark space began. Something was moving, something massive, something that had been traveling through the void for 3 million years coming. To finish what it started, the Devourers had returned. The defeat of the combined fleet sent shockwaves through the galaxy within days. The carefully maintained balance of power that had existed for millennia began to collapse. The hierarchies. Client states saw weakness and rebelled. Collective's hive mind fragmented as individual nodes began questioning the wisdom of the greater consciousness. The Dominion's ancient treaties dissolved as younger species realized their overlords were not invincible after all. Chaos spread like wildfire. Admiral Jang watched the reports flooding in from across the galaxy and felt a deep unease. They are tearing themselves apart. he said to President Hassan over a secure channel. Every minor power with a grievance is settling old scores. They think the old rulers have fallen. So now is their chance. Hassan rubbed her tired eyes. She had not slept properly in weeks. Did they not realize we are not interested in ruling them? No, Zhang replied. They see power and assume ambition. That is how the galaxy has always worked. The strong dominate the weak. They cannot comprehend a power that simply wants to be left alone. Ambassadors arrived at human stations daily, begging for protection or offering alliances. Some came with tribute, trying to buy humanity's favor. Others came with warnings, claiming their rivals were plotting against human interests. It was exhausting. Sarah Chum had other concerns. The Titans were revealing more of their capabilities every day, and each discovery was more troubling than the last. Marcus Webb had become humanity's foremost expert on architect technology, though he was the first to admit how little he truly understood. The power systems are biological, he explained to Sarah during one of their regular briefings, or at least partially biological. The Titans were not just built, they were grown, cultivated like organisms. That is why the neural interface works so well with humans. These ships think. Sarah stared at the technical readouts. Are you telling me the Colossus is alive? Not exactly, Webb said carefully. But it is not just a machine either. It is something in between, and it has memories. Sarah, memories of the war. He pulled up a holographic display showing a battle scene reconstructed from the Titan's archives. Dozens of architects. Vessels fought against shapes that hurt to look at, geometries that should not exist in three-dimensional space. The Devourers, Webb said quietly. That is what the architects called them. They came from outside the galaxy, from the void between galactic clusters, and they were hungry. The display showed an architect vessel being torn apart by invisible forces. Its crew of thousands died in seconds. The architects fought for 10,000 years. Webb continued. They built the Titans, these massive weapons platforms. And still they lost. World after world consumed. Species after species exterminated. By the end, the architects were making a last stand with only a handful of survivors. Sarah felt cold despite the comfortable temperature of her ready room. How did they lose? These Titans are incredibly powerful. Because the Devourers adapt, Webb said. Every weapon the architects used, the enemy learned to counter. By the final battles, the Titans were barely holding them off. And then the architects made their choice. He brought up another file, the final entries in the archive. They set the Titans to sleep mode and scattered them across the galaxy. A trap for the Devourers. The enemy would sense the Titans' power signatures and chase them. But by the time they arrived, the ships would be dormant, cold, undetectable. The architects hoped the Devourers would search for a while, find nothing, and eventually leave. And it worked, Sarah said. Understanding dawning. For 3 million years, the enemy found nothing. But now we woke the Titans up. Webb finished. We activated their power signatures. We sent out the recall signal through channels the Devourers can detect. We rang the dinner bell. Sarah, before she could respond, alarms wailed throughout the Colossus. Sarah ran to the bridge with Webb close behind. Report, she shouted as she took her command chair. Unknown contact at grid reference 774, her sensor officer said. Distance 200 light years. Mass comparable to a Titan. Configuration unlike anything in our database. The main screen showed a grainy image. Something huge moved through the dark between stars. Its shape was wrong angles that bent in impossible directions. Surfaces that reflected light in ways that made no geometric sense. It is alone. Tactical noted. One contact. No supporting vessels. Sarah's instinct screamed danger. Battle. Stations, ray shields, send. Word to the other Titans, we may have hostile contact. The thing moved with disturbing speed one moment. It was 200 light-years away the next. It was 50, then 10. It is coming right at us, Tactical said, voice tight with fear. Intercept course. Velocity increasing. Time to contact. 40 seconds. Sarah gripped her chairs. Armrests. Prepare all weapons. Target that thing. The moment it enters range. 30 seconds 2010. Devourer dropped out of faster than light. Traveled directly ahead of the Colossus up close. It was even more disturbing its hull, if it could be called, that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons bristled from its surface. But they too had that wrong, twisted quality for a long moment. The two massive vessels faced each other. Then the Devourer attacked. Its weapons were not energy beams or projectiles. They were something else. Reality itself seemed to tear where they struck the Colossus's shields. Flared alarms screamed. Shield strength down to 70% from one hit. Tactical shouted, "How is that possible?" Sarah did not waste time wondering. Return fire. All batteries. The Titan's weapons lit up space beams of concentrated energy, matter disintegration rays, temporal disruption fields. Humanity had barely understood what these weapons did. But now they fired them all. Most of the shots hit the Devourer squarely and did nothing. The enemy vessel's shields absorbed the impacts without visible effort. Negative effect. Weapons control reported. Target appears immune to our primary armaments. Devourer fired again this time. It hit the Colossus with multiple weapons simultaneously. The ship's shuttered systems flickered. Shields at 40%. Tactical cried, "Hull breaches on deck 70 through 90. Sarah's mind raced. The Titans were supposed to be unstoppable, but this thing was carving through the Colossus like it was made of paper, web. She shouted, "The architects fought these things. There must be information in the archives. What worked against them?" Marcus Webb was frantically searching through data streams. Nothing worked consistently, he said. Every weapon had diminishing returns. They adapt too fast. Another hit shields down to 20%. The Colossus was dying, and Sarah realized with sickening clarity that if one Devourer could do this, what would happen when the entire swarm arrived? All power to weapons, she ordered. Forget the shields. I want every gun we have firing continuously. Vary the frequencies. Change the attack patterns. Do not give it time to adapt. The Colossus unleashed everything. A storm of energy that would have vaporized entire fleets poured into the Devourer for a moment, just a moment. It seemed to work. The enemy's shields flickered. Its hull showed damage. Then it adapted. The same weapons that had hurt it seconds ago now had no effect. But Sarah had bought time for the other Titans to arrive, for more planet-sized warships dropped into normal space. Around the battle, they opened fire immediately. 5 Titans against 1 Devourer. The fury of their combined assault was beyond description. Space itself seemed to burn in slowly, painfully. The Devourer began to lose its shields, collapsed under the relentless bombardment. Its hull started to break apart. It is falling back, Tactical reported. The Devourer retreated, moving faster than should be possible in seconds. It was gone. The Titans had won barely. Sarah looked at the damage reports and felt sick. The Colossus had lost 30% of its systems. 200 crew members were dead, and that had been one Devourer. 1 Marcus, she said quietly. How many of these things are coming? Webb pulled up the archive data. His face went pale. The architects recorded encounters with thousands of them. He whispered, thousands, in the halls of the Galactic Council. News of the battle spread quickly. The species that had mocked Humanity's claims now faced a terrible truth. The humans had not just found ancient weapons, they had inherited an ancient war, and the enemy was coming for everyone. 1 year after the awakening, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The old power structures had collapsed into chaos. Former allies turned on each other in desperate bids for survival trade routes. Dissolved colonies went dark, entire sectors descended into war as species fought over resources, territory, and the scraps of their former glory. And through it all, humanity remained silent. The 18 Titans had been joined by 32 more discoveries. 50 planet-sized warships now floated in human space, forming an impenetrable wall around humanity's territory. No ship entered without permission, no communication was answered unless it came through official channels. The galaxy that had dismissed humanity as primitive scavengers now begged for their attention and received only silence. Admiral Sarah Chun walked through the halls of the Colossus, feeling the ship's presence in her mind. The neural link had become stronger over the years. Sometimes she could not tell where her thoughts ended and the ship's began. It should have frightened her instead. It felt right. "Admiral, you have another delegation requesting an audience," her aide informed her. "The hierarchy again?" "No, ma'am. The Velm Concordance. They claim the collective is raiding their colony worlds." Sarah did not even pause. Standard response. Humanity is not accepting new alliances at this time. Suggest they resolve their dispute through the Galactic Council. Ma'am. The Galactic Council effectively ceased to exist 6 months ago. Sarah knew this. She had watched the Council's final session members screaming at each other, accusations of betrayal flying, the whole rotten structure collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. Good riddance, she thought. Then suggest they figure it out themselves. She said she reached the command center and found Marcus Webb already there. He'd become gaunt over the past year, spending endless hours in the archives, but his eyes blazed with purpose. "I found something," he said without preamble. The architects did not just fight the Devourers. They studied them. He pulled up data on the main display. "Look at this biological analysis. Captured samples, interrogations of subunits. The Devourers are not ships, Sarah. They are organisms. Vast, complex organisms that evolved in the void between galaxies where normal matter barely exists." Sarah studied the data. "They feed on energy and matter?" "They consume everything," Webb confirmed. "Stars, planets, civilizations. They break it all down to its component particles and absorb it. And they are heading here because we activated the Titans. Because the Titans represent the largest concentration of energy they have detected in 3 million years." He brought up a tactical map. Red markers showed Devourer contacts. There were dozens of them now, all converging on the Milky Way from different angles. Our encounter with that single Devourer was a scout. Webb said, "The main swarm is still months away, but when it arrives..." He did not finish. He did not need to. Sarah could read the numbers. Thousands of Devourers against 50 Titans. 50 Titans that had barely survived combat with one. The math was not in their favor. "Have you told Earth?" she asked. "I sent my report this morning." Webb replied, "President Hassan has called an emergency session." "She wants your input?" Sarah nodded slowly. She knew what they would discuss, the question that had haunted humanity for the past year. What did they owe the galaxy? The Galactic Council had treated humans as second-class citizens for generations. They had restricted human expansion, dismissed human innovations, and generally acted as if humanity was an unfortunate accident that needed to be tolerated rather than respected. And when humanity found power, those same species had immediately tried to take it away, tried to neutralize the human threat before it could upset their comfortable order. Why should humanity save them now? Sarah had heard this argument countless times from politicians. from her own crew, from angry citizens who wanted revenge for decades of condescension and dismissal, and she understood it, she truly did, but she also understood something else. The Devourers did not care about politics or grudges. They did not care who had been right or wrong in the conflicts between species. They would consume everything equally, the arrogant and the humble, the powerful and the weak, the guilty and the innocent. Let the galaxy burn, and the fire would eventually reach Earth. We cannot stand aside, she said quietly. Webb looked at her. A lot of people disagree. A lot of people are wrong, Sarah replied. The architects built these ships for a reason. They left them for whoever would come after. That is us now. We inherited their weapons, so we inherit their duty, even if the galaxy does not deserve it. Sarah smiled grimly. Especially then. Doing what is right only when people deserve it is not morality. It is just transactional thinking. She brought up a communication channel. Get me President Hassan. It is time we told the galaxy what we are going to do. The broadcast went out on every available frequency. Sarah's face appeared on screens across the Milky Way in the shattered remains of council stations, on colony worlds preparing for war, in the halls of governments that had given up hope. This is Fleet Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. She began. For the past year, humanity has remained silent while the galaxy descended into chaos. Many have asked for our help. Many more have demanded it. Some have cursed us for our inaction. She paused, letting her words sink in. I want to be clear about something. Humanity owes the galactic community nothing. You treated us as inferior. You tried to take our discoveries by force. You attacked our territory without provocation, by any reasonable standard. We would be justified in leaving you to your fate. Across the galaxy, beings watched in despair. This was it. The confirmation of their fears. Humanity would stand aside and watch them all die. However, Sarah continued, and her voice hardened with determination, we are not going to do that, because the threat approaching is not your enemy or our enemy. It is everyone's enemy. The Devourers consume all life equally. If we let them take the galaxy, Earth will be next. She gestured to something off-screen, and the tactical display appeared, showing the approaching swarm. This is what is coming. Thousands of hostile entities, each one capable of destroying planets. The architects fought them for 10,000 years and lost, but the architects were alone. We do not have to be. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes intense. Humanity will defend the galaxy. We will position our Titan fleet at the galactic rim and meet the Devourers in open battle. But we cannot do this alone. We need every ship, every weapon, every species that can fight to stand with us. Set aside your wars. Forget your grudges. Because if we do not unite against this threat, we will all die separately. The broadcast ended for a long moment. The galaxy held its breath, then responses began flooding in. The hierarchy offered their remaining battle fleet, diminished but still formidable. The collective marshaled its resources, putting aside internal conflicts to face the external threat, the Dominions. Ambassador Velith himself volunteered to serve as a TOS. Liaison dozens of smaller species added their ships to the growing armada. It was not unity based on trust or friendship. It was unity based on survival. But it was enough. Sarah watched the fleet assemble and felt the weight of what they faced. Are we going to win? Webb asked quietly. Sarah thought about the architect archives, about 10,000 years of war, about a civilization that had built wonders beyond imagination, and still lost. I do not know, she said honestly. The architects had more Titans than we do. They had more time to prepare, but they were alone. And we are not. She pulled up the tactical display. Human Titans formed the core 50 massive vessels, each one a fortress of ancient technology around them. Thousands upon thousands of ships from hundreds of species. The largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Still probably not enough. Webb, I need you to do something for me, Sarah said. I want you to compile everything we know about the Devourers. Every weakness the architects discovered. Every successful tactic they used. Every piece of data that might help. And then I want you to distribute it to every species in the fleet. No secrets. No advantages. If we are going to survive this, everyone needs to know what they are fighting. Webb nodded and turned to go. But Sarah stopped him. Marcus, thank you. For what? For touching that chair, she said with a slight smile. For waking up the Titans. For giving humanity a chance to be the heroes instead of the bystanders. Webb smiled back. We were always going to be the heroes, Sarah. We just needed the tools to do it. As he left, Sarah turned back to the display. The red markers representing the Devourer swarm were closer now. Weeks away, not months soon. The galaxy would face its greatest test. The galaxy that had spent millennia maintaining careful balance. Avoiding change. Suppressing anything that might upset their comfortable order. That galaxy was gone, burned away by chaos and fear. What would emerge from the ashes depended on what happened in the coming battle. Sarah thought about Eartha, about the billions of humans who had no idea their species was about to fight for the survival of everything. She thought about the other species, equally ignorant, equally vulnerable, and she thought about the architects who had faced this same choice 3 million years ago. They had chosen to fight, knowing they would lose. They had built the Titans as a gift to whoever came next, a chance to succeed where they had failed. All right. Colossus, Sarah said softly, speaking to the ancient mind that shared her consciousness.